touch it, don't you?
Now, any time that you are looking at removing or changing biological media, it's a really good idea to do it slowly. So in this case, we've got some Marine Pure in there now, and we really want to be relying on the Marine Pure. Then we've got a bunch of Copy Marine Pure products in there as well. So what I'd look at doing is, now that the Marine Pure has been in there for months, I'd look at pulling out the other media, a bag of this, a bag of that, maybe one every couple of weeks, monitoring your water, because what you don't want to do is necessarily pull it all out at once and then interrupt the biological cycle. You want to take a little bit out, wait a couple of weeks, put a little bit out, wait a couple of weeks, and that's a better way to remove any biological media. And make sure that you clean it on a semi-regular basis using water you've removed. So the ammonia of this tank is pretty much zero. The nitrite is pretty much zero. Now, because I'm getting a tiny, tiny trace of nitrite, having a good clean of the biological media, which is just taking it out and giving it a clean in tank water and putting it back in, wouldn't be a bad idea. And the silicates are pretty close to zero. So the silicates come in tap water, and the silicates come in natural seawater. So silicates are something that you're definitely going to get. Now I'm just looking for my silicate chart. It's going to be the last one. Of course, because that's the one I had it open on. So the silicates are, let's call that zero. Oh no, that one's the silicates. Still pretty much zero. So ammonia pretty much zero, silicates pretty much zero, nitrite very, 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 very low. So maybe giving a wash of the biological media wouldn't hurt. So how you would wash these medias is these bags of noodles. You'd grab a bucket or something. You'd drain some water from the fish tank into the bucket. You'd grab them out. You'd dunk, and then throw them back in again to clean them. Now the Marine Pure here is underneath the protein skimmer, which is a very good place for it to be, and it's a good way of elevating the protein skimmer. But every now and then you take the skimmer out, give the skimmer a good clean, and while you have got the skimmer out, grab the Marine Pure out and just grab yourself a foam box or an esky, drain a bit of water from the tank from the foam box or the esky, and then you pick up the Marine Pure and drop it a few times. Just rinse it through, because it's completely porous. So if you dunk it under the water and then hold it up out of the water, you'll see all the gunk do out. It's good to do with two hands, because you don't want to put too much pressure on one place, because being in there for a period of time, it will get relatively soft. So use two hands, dunk it under the water, lift it out of the water, dunk it under the water, lift it out of the water, until the water's running off pretty clean, then put it back in again, and then throw that water out. So if you did that twice a year, that'd be fairly good. Or if you do get any ammonia or nitrite in your water at all, then that would be another reason to do it, because if you're getting clogging of your media, it will reduce its efficiency. So in this case, we're using polyfilter as our pre-filtration, and this polyfilter is not black, so it is not expired, but it is totally covered in shit. So if you take this polyfilter outside and hit it with a hose and try and get all the shit off it, that would get a little bit more value out of it. And what's not a bad thing when your polyfilter does start to become a little bit expired is take your old one outside, hit it with the hose, and then you put a new one underneath, and then you put the dirtier one back in on top. And the aim of this mechanically is to make sure that garbage isn't going into the rest of the sump. And if you're getting particles through the rest of the sump, then what you're doing is probably not working, and therefore it needs to be cleaned more often. If your sump's pretty clean and you're not getting a lot of crap into your sump, that means whatever you're doing is probably working. So if, let's say, twice a year you go and give all your biomedia a clean, and if it's not that bad, then you can just keep doing whatever you're doing. But there is a lot of crap on this polyfilter, so I would like to see this hit with a hose and a fresh piece put underneath, and then I'd like to see all the biomedia cleaned in water from the tank, and I'm going to suggest that that'll be pretty dirty. So in the future, if that top sheet of polyfilter is cleaned more often, that would be a good idea. What a lot of other people do is they'll often put a bit of filter wool over the top of their polyfilter. That way the really solid crap gets caught in the filter material and you can just chuck that out because it's much cheaper than the polyfilter. So that'll extend the life of the polyfilter as well by just putting like a bit of JBL filter wool or whatever you want over the top of it. So a common question I get is, which way does the polyfilter go up? It doesn't really matter, but it's slightly better if the softer side is towards the water flow. So if the water's going down, it's slightly better if that's the top and that's the bottom. In reality, I don't think it makes too much difference. But sometimes when you pick up the polyfilter, you'll see a clear hard side and the soft side. I prefer the soft side up. Now, people often say polyfilter, the real polyfilter, is too expensive. But what it does afford you is a lot less maintenance. This tank was previously run with a filter sock, and the filter sock had to be cleaned a couple of times a week, and they're an absolute pain in the neck to clean. It's not like they're a slight pain in the neck. They're a total, let's say, pain in the ass. I hate filter socks. So in the meantime, he's now gone to polyfilter, and sure, polyfilter is not the cheapest thing on earth, but this polyfilter is only getting replaced every 3 months. So instead of cleaning a filter sock twice a week, he's just replacing something every 3 months to get the results that he's been getting. Now, in saying that though, this one does require more effort because it's covered in mud. It's not actually black, which means it's not chemically used up, but it is completely covered in sludge. So taking that outside and hosing it more regularly would be a good idea. But polyfilter adsorbs and absorbs impurities out of the water, and when it's expired chemically, it'll go black, and it also works mechanically. So either put a bit of filter wool on top of it to extend its life, or take it outside and give it a hose, and Bob's your uncle. I think it's the best money you'll ever spend because it lowers your maintenance. So this is the packet that the polyfilter is in. If this isn't the one you're talking about, the actual trademark, this one. If it isn't that particular one, then it's a copy, because there's lots of copy polyfilters on the market, but you want the real thing, the thing that's had all the research done. This is the one you want. So the health of your fish is exactly due to the quality of your water and the quality of your food. Now, my favorite foods for this particular aquarium would be a mix of Dainichi Color as a treat and Spectrum's probiotics as the main food. This is the main food I would feed these fish, and mainly because of the probiotic bacteria in the food. The probiotic bacteria in the food means that when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. And that's one of the secrets for how this tank has managed to have a very healthy, happy assortment of fish, and it is very heavily populated. There is a lot of fish in this tank, and even though there's so many fish in this tank, the polyfilter is only getting replaced every 3 months, which realistically is quite amazing considering there's so many fish in the tank. If there wasn't, if you weren't feeding this food, then the pre-filtration would have to be significantly more. Now, the other thing that polyfilter is particularly good for is actually cleaning your algae. Because if you get an algae magnet or a razor blade or whatever, and you clean all the algae off the aquarium, then cleaning the algae off the aquarium is great to make the aquarium look good, but it doesn't actually solve anything because most algae is unicellular, so therefore the algae floats around and some of it just reattaches back on. Some of it will get eaten, some of it will get caught in your filter, which is totally fine. But using polyfilter to remove your algae is not a bad thing, because the algae will cling to the polyfilter, and that way when you're pulling the polyfilter out, you can just get a piece like this, cut it to a small size, and use that for cleaning your glass. And that way when you pull the algae, when you pull the polyfilter out, the algae is caught on the polyfilter, so therefore you're actually removing it from the aquarium. Now I'm just going to check what the temperature is now. So the temperature of this tank is currently sitting at 25, 26, 27. So it's about 27 degrees. So that's about the warmest you want this tank to be. So 28, let's call that maximum. And it's not a super hot day today. So considering the possibility of either increased ventilation, whether we're putting a fan over the top of, remove the lids and blow a fan over the top, or blowing a fan over the sump can help. Or when it comes a super hot day, particularly when you're away on holidays in summer, if the tank goes getting 29, 30 degrees, then you're in big trouble. So that's a consideration to have before the super hot summer days. Temperature control. Otherwise you're going to have coral bleaching in your fish tank, which is not going to be so fun. Oh, look what I just stumbled upon. I stumbled upon an aquarium. This is literally what an aquarium was in the 70s. And in the 70s, his mum went for a big trip around America and collected matchsticks. You'd have even trouble finding that many different brands of matchstick these days. That's a hell of a collection. I wonder if there's matchstick enthusiasts out there that would go nuts over this. Far out. Yeah, when I was a kid, and now we're talking 80s, this is what my auntie and my nan, and this is what a fish tank looked like. A light just like that, on a steel stand just like that. That is so cool. An original 70s fish tank. And what were you saying? When your mum bought the fish tank, she couldn't afford fish?
Couldn't afford fish, she put tuna cans and sardine cans in.
Tuna cans and sardine. And then obviously she ended up getting fish. That is very cool.